Welcome back to the Hollwood Makers Podcast. I'm Anna Pagosian, your host, and today I am joined by an incredible guest, Sibyl, who is the executive director and head of programming for the SOHO International Film Festival. Sibyl, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So to start this off, Sibyl, do you want to just tell me about how you got involved with SOHO?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a multi-hyphenate, like probably most of our industry friends. I'm an actor, producer, filmmaker that basically started in that world. And my partner on the festival, the founder, his name is Jorge Balos. He actually had a talent agency as well and was an actor. And we knew each other as childhood friends, from back in the days, performances and such. We were from dueling performance troops, actually. One time we bumped into each other on set of a Hollywood production that we were both working on. And we sort of like, wait a minute, I know you. And we started talking, and him and I sort of bonded over this idea of the film festival that he was looking to do at that time. What happened basically is that this is back in 2009 or so. There has been sort of like a need. So since we're both in the industry, we're obviously all around a lot of filmmaker friends that are independent filmmakers and such. And there's a little bit of um, a need and a frustration because a lot of these filmmakers were at an idea at that point that there's a certain festival in New York that was supposed to serve our community, and they've been feeling a little bit shut out and shunned out um, because the festival's gotten big so quickly and became quite corporate that the independent filmmakers really stood no chance, especially the New York filmmakers. So he was planning to put that for the year, sort of do a pop-up festival. That was actually sort of how it started. And anticipating to maybe have 25, 30 submissions, and they would just present on the loft, because at that time they have a loft in Soho. Um, which is how the name SOHO International Film Festival. But shockingly, for that timeline and also for such a short time and their first time ever using a submission place like Without the Box at that time that was still existent, uh, I ended up with 250 submissions or so, which was kind of shocking for people who've never done festivals. And he had told me about that was happening. So I kind of came on board to observe and advise at that time for the first year. But it it was such a big success the first year, and really you could tell the need for it, that he wanted to make it more official. So he asked me to come on board in the second year to help out with the festival, which at that point we were thinking we wanted to dream bigger and really make it official. And that's when we partnered up with the Quad. At that time is one of the only family owned theaters in New York City. The Ken Bars used to own a Quad then, and they played a lot of the independent cinema. So we partnered with them and we brought the festival there for the second year. And that's when I came on board officially. And, luckily I have a lot of friends in the industry that have some names, and they all came up to show up, and show support. Even had some of the films for some of the name actors. So that gave a little bit of press and a little bit of, um, rallying of the community, of the independent filmmaking community that showed up to the festival. And that proved to us, and we had doubled it. It was 500 submissions on that. So, which is for someone who's just new on the scene, was quite a lot. And we watched every single one of them, and we realized that this was necessary. This was needed. So it sort of historically started that way. And I was just going to help out for a year or so, and that was 17 years ago. We're in our 17th year. So obviously there's so much love. Most of us, George, myself, we're all, filmmakers, producers. We all live in this industry. We kind of breathe it. So we really wanted to serve the community in such a way that we want to be taken care of when we're out there with our projects that we put our heart and soul in. So this is how SOHO International Film Festival sort of just bloomed and got bigger every year, and have such a loyal base of followers that really continue to support and send people and send their films. Even when they've gotten big, they won an Oscar, they still try to come to us and say, listen, we started there, want to show my film again. So that's pretty much the short, long history of it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so incredible how everybody just kind of came together for this cause to help keep the independent film community going, and it's just so cool how it's blossomed into such an incredible festival. And we met when I was volunteering for SOHO last year, and I definitely felt the energy. It was just so much fun and it felt like a family. So it was so cool to experience that. And I know you mentioned that there are so many submissions coming in every year, even from the beginning. And when I was at the festival, I really noticed how there was such a big variety of films from like
Hmm.
genres to cultures and like different experience levels for filmmakers. Getting so many festival submissions and such a like huge variety, how do you choose?
That is that question I always want. People always ask me that, especially the way I program, because I don't really program a specific way. I don't believe in having a theme every year. I don't believe necessarily of having a specific genre program. I was just in a festival I have a few films in the festival circuit this year as a producer as well. And I have a dramatic film, for example, that got programmed in an all drama block. And it was intense because all the films are, you wanted to leave there really depressed because every film was really, really sad and depressing. So I kind of break away from that, in the way I program. So it really is more about whether I gravitate to the story that I watch, whether I can actually hear what is happening in terms of the characters, and whether the story makes sense, short or feature, right? I mean, I don't mind some open endings, for example, because, that's what it requires. But I also don't believe in just a half a movie, especially with shorts. I can't just watch something that sort of has no beginning, no end, kind of, which sometimes some feel is experimental. We don't do. That's probably the one thing we don't, because I don't like to use the word experimental because I think some people take it too far, what experimental means. But in terms of programming, if it's a story that really, can affect someone and make someone feel, that's where I would gravitate to. So, and when it comes to production value, it's not always about what was spent on the film. It's always about whether it came through, what your message is in the film. So, um, in terms of picking the film, it really is just as simple as that for me. I want to make sure that the film can reach the audience. It doesn't matter if there's an A-lister in there, if the movie is all fluff and just, kind of topical in terms of the way it's presented, then it's not, to me, it's not worth it because they can always just get a commercial distribution. I
Yeah.
feel like, that's the thing about independent cinema and also film festivals that's really, really important that I hope we never forget is that the film festival was always put out so that we can discover new talent, we can discover new stories, we can, just discover things that you don't find out there in the commercial, space. And I hope that, the festivals will stay that way. More and more festivals, maybe out of necessity, are accepting some of these studio films because, the festivals do need to survive. I understand that. But we just can't turn our backs away from the up and coming or the new filmmakers or actually experienced filmmakers that are finally kind of finding their voices. It's people finding their voices and hearing those voices and having that space for them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think it's so interesting how you bring up it's really just about the story and this having a strong voice coming through from that
Hmm.
story. I also you mentioned about your film that's in a festival and kind of being in this like dramatic
Yeah.
walk. I remember when I was at Soho and we got to sit on the screenings, the shorts blocks were super interesting because I felt like they were different in terms of like subject matter and story, but they just kind of made sense together. I guess kind of going off of the last question, how do you kind of group shorts together to create these shorts blocks? Is there is it kind of intuition or is there kind of like a theme?
So, like I said, I don't do thematic, but I go by emotion, right? So when I program, and this is really important to me, that I want the audiences to go on a journey And that's why a lot of my programming are eclectic, as you can see, but there's a purpose for it. I want the audience to come in there to see something they've never seen before, for example, or maybe they'll see something so familiar, but then they'll also suddenly get jolted with something that's altogether different. But I want you to go through it. I want you to go through maybe it might start sad, and then suddenly it might make you a little bit angry, and then by the end you're smiling and laughing. That's really, to me, one of the joys of programming. I really enjoy programming my shorts, and I really take so much time meticulously planning them together and plotting them together to see what the experience is like when you're sitting there. I'm pretty proud of it. I get a lot of feedback from people about that they find it unusual and different. One of the things that I tend to do, is I like to mix in genres that a certain audience wouldn't necessarily watch. Like, for example, I don't necessarily believe on doing like an LGBTQI program, for example. I get a lot of LGBTQI films and I love presenting those films, but if you put them in one block, the people that will go on that block are only the people that are allies or that support that block. And then the people that you need to open their sort of their world into, the norm of having our LGBTQIA community, um, friends and families, they don't get to see what those stories are because some of them are too close to even the idea of it, or even the issue of race, for example. Like I am, as you know, I'm Asian, I'm a woman of color, um, and representation for us is such a big conversation. But what does that actually mean, right? So the thing is, I was born here, personally at least, and I'm an American, and I don't consider myself, I'm a New Yorker, so I don't even think about the fact that I'm Asian or Spanish, but I just think of myself as a New Yorker, as an American. But, because things are so divisive these days, I feel like even more so, these type of programs where just you put these stories in the middle of everything else is important so that the audiences that come in for a certain film or supporting a certain film will actually get a chance to see this film and hear this story and hear that point of view. That to me is very important. And I think the shorts blocks is where I can do that, where I can make the audiences sort of come together and realize that this is just the world. There is nothing niche or different about this. This is the world. This is a human story. This is a life story. This is a person story. And I want them to be able to relate to it. So hopefully it's succeeding. So I hope you got a chance to see a lot of them when you were there. And again, thank you, by the way. I didn't get a chance to publicly say, but our festival, as you know, as you learned, is very volunteer based. So having someone like you be there and help out and just be a person that actually cares about what we're doing is such an important factor for us surviving and making it through as a festival. So thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, it was so important for me to also be a part of the independent film space in New York. And I mean, I'm hoping to come back in the fall as well and rejoin the team. But yeah, I mean, I guess going into kind of the operations of a festival, I mean, there's so many moving parts, there's so many people, so many events, and like all on this like tight time schedule. How does everything come together? How do you kind of find order in the chaos?
It's production. I just treat it like it's production. It's me producing 110 films all at the same time for 1 week. Um, it really is that. It's all about logistics and just plotting your schedule for the day, just like you would have a call sheet and sort of plan it that way. And understanding, where your shots are going to be done and where your next location will be. That's basically what, it is. I won't lie, in the first few years, it was, there was a lot of trial and error that we had to go through. But, for the most part, because our audience base is mostly people that are in the industry that understand, it's been sort of a collaborative process, which is beautiful. It's made it less painful in a sense because really people have been always understanding because they know. And honestly, because we care so much, most of the people, including yourself coming as a volunteer, you actually want to know about this business. You want to be in it. You're submerged in it. And that's, I think you probably realize most of the volunteers are, even the newcomers, they want to be. So it's a different, atmosphere. Like there's that need to want to do this together and make it successful. And that is one of the gifts that we do have, and hopefully we continue to do, for years to come. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much like they're your crew, and this is kind of like a big film, like you said.
Yeah.
And everybody just have each other's backs. I'm wondering, because you told me about how in the beginning there was kind of some growing pains with learning how to manage all the chaos. Has there ever been a time where something kind of went sideways and you and the team had to work together to get it back on track?
Yeah, several times. It still happens because you can't anticipate sometimes things that could happen in a location if you were shooting, right? Things or the weather changes. Speaking of weather, one that I remember, we used to when we had our screenings at the Village East downtown, right? So we always get the big theater on the weekend, which is Theater One, has almost 400 seats. That's where we do our big premieres and our big screenings. So it tends to get sold out because most of them are world premieres. We're talking about almost 400 seats, right? And there was one summer where it was like this. It went into like 100-degree weather outside, and the AC broke down. It just
Oh
wasn't working
no.
on a 400-seat theater that is packed wall to wall. It was sold out, and it was just unbearable. Like there was just no way we could do a screening there, and people flew in from everywhere. So you know how it is with festivals, people travel, and we already have, as you know, a set schedule, and we are a nonprofit, so it's not like we have unlimited funds to just say, oh, let's go get another theater and book this and book that. So we had to make do with our space, which is that big theater, and we have two little, the smaller theaters down below. We basically had to change the schedule last minute, kind of spoke to some of the filmmakers that were supposed to be in the smaller theaters and be like, listen, we're gonna need to move your schedule. Da, da, da. We didn't, thank God, have to cancel anything, which is the one thing I really, like I said, people come from all over. This is a big deal for a lot of these independent filmmakers. The last thing you want to do is their premiere not to happen. So we had to basically in within like a time frame of 15, 20 minutes max, had to basically make the decision to close out of the big theater, move everyone into the two smaller theaters, split them up, stagger it by a few minutes so that the Q&A can still happen for both, because now we're in two separate rooms. There's no longer this one room. And the press that they had to tell them the same thing. And it was just like sort of like this big, it was very stressful for us, but thank God on the front end, everyone was very understanding. They would rather not obviously die in heat inside the theater. And the filmmakers were stressed, but they were not upset because they were happy that we figured out a way to still make their premiere happen. And it became actually a kind of a news point for them that because they're so sold out, they had all of these things happening, but like everything still came together. So luckily for us, that again, pulled together in the end, but we had to really get creative, and it's just, that's plan B, plan C. We just had to sort of make it happen. And the theater was also very, very generous in helping us out to make it sort of move smoothly and just get people situated. I think we ended up giving a free popcorn just so nobody felt, but it was really, it was a good result for something that could have been really disastrous, probably more so for the filmmaker and their premiere. So it turned out to be a really good thing for them as well. So
Yeah, and there's
it
so
was a
much
moment.
to making it happen for these filmmakers, even when unexpected challenges arise. I guess then what is the most important thing you feel like you've learned from running the Soho Film Festival?
Most important thing, I'm still learning. I feel like every day after 17 years, you learn a lot of things every cycle of the festival. But the one thing I guess commonly as a thread that I've realized is that this is necessary and this is definitely needed. And it's definitely a space that I hope that, will always be there for storytellers. Because I think hearing new voices, new points of view, especially now we're in a world of AI and things like that, where things can just be taken from people and there's no more originality. I think this is what film festivals are great for, because you still hear those real new stories, new voices, every day, that new point of views, at least for points of view, sorry, maybe similar experiences, but not really, because when you come from this kind of point of view or that person's point of view, male versus female, gay, like it's just there's so much and so many more nuances that unlimited nuances really to learn about human nature in general, that I think that's why the stories will always find ways to be creative and different. So I think one thing I learned is that every year I always say, oh, this is the last year. I can't anymore. This is so much work, but every year, because I know how much work goes into it for as a filmmaker myself, like, I feel this is important. This stage is important, and I hope that people will continue to support film festivals, because I think festivals are important for that very reason, and hopefully festivals will understand their roles still and never forget. Like having a screen for theaters, for films is really important. It's getting more and more difficult, honestly, for nonprofit festivals like us to have to go to a movie theater. But to me, this is still important that you have a real movie theater versus a convention center or a hotel, meeting room to show these films, because for some of them, this is the only chance that they'll be in a big screen, even though they made it for the big screen, because everybody's, switching straight to OTT or to streamers. So I think that's one big thing that I do learn as a common thread every year, how important to keep this going. And as much as I can, as far as I can, I'll keep doing this. But we do hope that people will continue to support it.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's just so truly grassroots and so truly like the indie film spirit is so strong at SOHO that I think I also felt like this is so important that we have this for filmmakers where they're able to show their stories and have a space to kind of showcase that and meet other people who are similar to them in that
Yeah.
aspect. And I guess in going off of that, if you're a filmmaker or an attendee at SOHO, what do you think would be the best way for someone to make the most of their experience at the festival?
I always say, to me, the most important part and one of the um issues that I have with my attending some festivals is access and having a way to meet people. As you know, as you probably experienced this year, we make an effort really to have like our filmmaker lounges every day where people can go after screenings so they can meet. Um, I really think it's so important for people to show up for their films and to show support for their own screenings and for other filmmakers being able to support each other. So if you are a filmmaker traveling, whether it be you're here for a day or 2 days or the whole week of the festival, maximize your time and actually show up to some of these screenings, meet the other filmmakers. This is a place for you that you can find people that you're going to end up collaborating with or meeting somewhere in the industry, if you stay somewhere in the future. And I think giving each other that support just means everything to a filmmaker. And I know a lot of filmmakers in our festival have made lifelong friends. We've had many films. Every year we have films from filmmakers that met other, you know, filmmakers and collaborators at SOHO, and they end up submitting to us a year later, 2 years later, because they met at our festival and they've decided to come together. Same with the volunteers. So to me, that's what this is for. That's what the space was made for. And you need to be able to actually for it to you to maximize it, you have to make the effort to be there and be present and just be available for everyone else as they would be for you. Um, some festivals don't give you that access. We actually are able to give you that, so use it. It's very rare that you can do it, and I really try to really spend that time and that effort.
Yeah,
That would be my advice.
I really love how you talked about how, I mean, filmmakers should be supporting other filmmakers as well. I mean, if you want to get the support, you have to give the love first. And I think
Exactly.
it's just so important to have that mutual, like, support for each other. I mean, I feel like this is like an industry that it's so competitive, but at the same time, it's so important to, like, pull each other up together. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess with that, I'd love to ask, when can we expect the next SOHO Film Festival, and how can our viewers keep up with updates?
Yeah, the festival is ironically the calendar just worked out same dates for this year from last year.
Really?
It's again October 7 to 14.
Wow.
Um, because yeah, the days aligned very perfectly. So we're having the same dates, October 7 to the 14th. Um, the tag, we have our social network, we're in Facebook, Instagram, YouTube channel, Pinterest, anywhere, as at SOHO Film Fest. That's, SOHO Film Fest. And the website is sohofilmfest.com. That's where we usually make most of our announcements on our socials and on our Facebook. Um, and if you just follow us, support, come to the festival, buy tickets because these tickets will help, us keep going the festival and also help the filmmakers be able to have a space for their films. And yeah, I think that's pretty much the best way to really get the information, as to where we are, what we're up to.
That's awesome. And yeah, I definitely recommend that if you're in New York during October 7th to 14th, you said,
Yes.
absolutely attend if you can. Yeah, I mean, on that note, that concludes today's episode of the Hollwood Makers Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me, Sibyl. It was such a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thanks for having me, Anna.